The city square is bustling with activity on a bright, sunny morning. The clink of coffee cups, the hum of conversations, and the sound of footsteps fill the air. But amidst it all, Michael Johnson, a well-dressed black man in his late 40s, stands out, not because of his attire, but because of what he's doing. In the middle of the square, Michael is sweeping the streets and picking up litter with an ease and care that suggests he takes genuine pride in his work. His tailored suit and polished shoes are at odds with the broom in his hand, but it doesn't seem to bother him. Instead, he moves with purpose, greeting shopkeepers and pedestrians with a smile. "Morning, Mrs. Harris," he calls to the elderly woman selling flowers from a small cart near the corner. She looks up and smiles warmly. "Good morning, Mr. Johnson. You're always so kind. Thank you for keeping our corner nice and tidy," she replies. Michael pauses and buys a small bouquet, handing her a few bills in exchange. "I appreciate you, Mrs. Harris. Have a good day," he says, walking off with the flowers in hand, still smiling. His warm demeanor and willingness to help everyone, no matter their status, stand out. As he continues his rounds, greeting a few more people along the way, passers-by can't help but offer words of gratitude. Some thank him for keeping the square clean. Others compliment him on his attitude. Michael doesn't seem like someone you would expect to see sweeping the streets. He looks like he belongs in an office or a boardroom, his suit sharp, his shoes spotless. But here he is, making a positive impact in a way that seems too rare to ignore. As Michael moves toward another section of the square, two police officers in their patrol car notice him. They exchange glances, their curiosity piqued. They watch him for a moment, unsure of what to make of the scene. It's clear that something about Michael's presence doesn't quite add up in their minds. "Who is that guy?" Officer Stevens asks, his voice laced with suspicion as he stares at Michael, still sweeping with a calm focus. Officer Kelly, his partner, shrugs. "I don't know. He's always around, but he never seems to be doing anything wrong. Just always cleaning. Kind of weird, right?" "Yeah, something doesn't sit right with me," Stevens says, his tone becoming a little sharper. "I mean, why is he so well dressed for this job? Could be up to something." Kelly raises an eyebrow. "You think so? Seems harmless to me." Stevens narrows his eyes at Michael as he continues about his work, seemingly oblivious to the officer's scrutiny. "I'll keep an eye on him, just in case." But as the officers sit in the car, watching Michael, the man continues to work with purpose, his face calm and gentle. His focus on the task at hand seems to push back against the tension the officers have created, highlighting an undeniable contrast between who Michael is and what the officers assume about him. In this bustling city square, Michael's role may seem small, but he carries with him an unseen depth. Little do the officers know, he's been doing this for years, helping others, maintaining a peaceful and clean environment, and all while having nothing but kindness to offer in return. The scene transitions as Michael finishes his sweeping, moving toward another part of the square, his flowers in hand, with the bustle of the city continuing around him, unaware of the subtle judgment that's been cast upon him. The day carries on, and Michael continues his work, unaware that he's drawing more attention than he usually does. Officers Scott and Peterson, having observed him from their patrol car, decide to step out and confront him directly. As they approach Michael, Officer Scott flashes a smirk, clearly sizing him up. "Hey, buddy," Scott calls out, his voice dripping with mockery. "Looks like you missed a spot." Michael looks up from his work, maintaining his calm composure. "Good morning, officers. Just doing my part to keep the city clean," he responds politely, giving them a small nod. Peterson chuckles and steps forward. "Is this your day job or just a side hustle?" he asks, clearly amused by the situation. His tone is casual but condescending, as if he's somehow above the task at hand. Michael, ever composed, offers a small smile but doesn't let the question ruffle him. "It's an important job. Someone has to take care of the city." Scott and Peterson exchange a glance, a look of superiority flashing between them. "You really take pride in this, huh?" Scott says, the humor in his voice now laced with more disdain. "Well, don't get too comfortable. People don't usually stay long in this line of work." Michael's eyes narrow slightly, sensing the shift in their tone, but he doesn't let his composure slip. He knows what they're implying, but he refuses to engage with their bias. "Have a nice day, officers," Michael replies calmly, turning away to resume his work. As he walks past them, the officers' laughter follows him, echoing in the open street. Their words, meant to diminish him, seem to bounce off of him like water on a duck's back. They may see him as nothing more than a street cleaner, but Michael knows his worth. The officers stand there for a moment, watching him walk away. Scott's face tightens, but he says nothing. Peterson, still chuckling, shakes his head. "Whatever, man. Let him have his moment," he mutters, but the edge in his voice betrays a lingering judgment. Michael, however, doesn't look back. He simply keeps moving, focusing on his task, undeterred by the mockery. His work, though invisible to many, is valuable, and today even the officer's negativity won't diminish his sense of pride in what he does. As Michael continues his work, sweeping the sidewalk, a sleek black car slowly pulls up to the curb. The engine hums quietly, the contrast between the luxury car and the gritty city streets sharp. The officers, still hanging around the corner, straighten up at the sight of the car, recognizing it immediately. The door opens, and out steps Mr. Whitaker, the city's mayor. He's impeccably dressed in a tailored suit, exuding authority. The officers, who had been idly chatting moments ago, quickly straighten their uniforms and greet him. "Good morning, sir," Officer Peterson says, standing a little straighter than necessary. Whitaker gives them a nod, but his eyes quickly move to Michael. His face lights up with recognition and genuine warmth. "Michael, good to see you out here," he calls out across the street. Michael looks up, his face breaking into a smile as he straightens up, pushing the broom to one side. "Morning, Whitaker. How's the family?" The greeting is completely unceremonious, as if this is just another exchange between friends. The officers, still caught in the unexpectedness of the moment, exchange confused looks. Officer Scott, who had earlier mocked Michael, is now looking puzzled and a little uncomfortable. "You know this guy, sir?" Scott asks, his voice tinged with confusion. Whitaker glances at the officers before turning back to Michael, his tone shifting slightly to one of respect. "This guy, as you call him, happens to be the owner of half the buildings in this city, and the man who funded our latest community outreach programs," he says, a hint of pride in his voice. The officers' jaws drop simultaneously. For a brief moment, there's only silence as they process the information. "Wait, what?" Scott stammers, his face a mixture of disbelief and embarrassment. Whitaker turns to the officers, a slight edge of amusement in his voice. "I think you might have made some assumptions about Mr. Johnson here. I'd suggest you be careful who you judge in the future." He pauses for a moment, as if letting the weight of his words sink in. "Michael, here, has done more for this city than most people ever will." Michael remains composed, though there's a hint of satisfaction in his eyes. He offers Whitaker a small nod. "I try my best," he says humbly, but his calm demeanor speaks volumes. Whitaker turns to the officers, who are now clearly embarrassed. "You two should know that people's worth isn't defined by the job they do or how they're dressed. It's their character and actions that count." Scott and Peterson stand there, speechless, clearly unsure of how to respond. Their earlier mockery of Michael feels like a distant memory now. They shift awkwardly, unsure of how to recover from their previous behavior. "Now, if you'll excuse us, I need to catch up with Mr. Johnson here," Whitaker says smoothly. He gestures for Michael to walk with him, and the two men stroll a few feet away from the officers. The city's mayor and the man they had just mocked as just another worker are now walking side by side, talking like old friends. As the two men walk away, Officer Peterson turns to his partner and mutters, "Well, that was awkward." Scott doesn't say anything. He's too busy staring after the two men, still processing what he's just learned. The realization that they had mocked someone of such significance makes him feel small, and the weight of his assumptions sinks in deeper than he expected. Back with Whitaker and Michael, the conversation continues. But the transformation has already taken place. Michael, who had been judged and looked down upon earlier, is now in the company of one of the city's most powerful men, and while it's clear to everyone watching that Michael's true worth has just been revealed, it's also a lesson that will stay with Officer Scott and Peterson long after this encounter. Whitaker claps Michael on the back. "Thanks again for everything you've done for this city. People like you don't get enough recognition." Michael smiles warmly, grateful for the acknowledgement, but not needing it for validation. "I just do what I can, Whitaker. It's the least I can do for a city that's given me so much." Whitaker gestures toward Michael, his tone both admiring and respectful. "You're looking at Michael Johnson, one of the wealthiest and most generous people in this city," he says, his voice carrying an air of pride. "He's the reason the park was renovated last year and why small businesses got those grants during the pandemic." The officers, still standing in stunned silence, exchange glances. Scott's face pales as the realization hits him like a freight train. Michael remains calm, his demeanor as steady as ever. "I believe in giving back," he adds simply. "This city gave me everything, and I want to make sure it thrives." Scott, visibly taken aback by the revelation, stammers, "But why are you out here cleaning the streets?" Michael smiles softly, his eyes glinting with quiet pride. "Because it reminds me of where I came from." He pauses for a moment, letting his words sink in. "I used to be a janitor before I built my first business. Just because I've succeeded doesn't mean I've forgotten the value of hard work." Whitaker nods, his expression one of admiration. That's the thing about Michael. Despite everything he's achieved, he hasn't forgotten the people who helped him along the way. He knows what it's like to struggle, and he's never lost touch with the everyday worker. The officers, now standing with their hands in their pockets, exchange a look of disbelief. Peterson finally finds his voice. I had no idea." Michael's gaze softens. "It's easy to make assumptions about people, officer, but you never know their full story." His voice is calm, but it carries a weight of truth. "I don't expect anyone to recognize me when I'm out here doing this work. I'm not out here for recognition, but if my actions can change the way people see the world, then maybe it's worth it." Whitaker watches Michael as he speaks, clearly proud of the man he's become. "Michael's story isn't just about business success," he continues, his voice carrying a tone of reverence. "He's used his wealth to build foundations that support youth programs, education, and local charities. He's the reason there's a scholarship fund available for kids in this neighborhood who want to go to college." Scott and Peterson stand there dumbfounded. The man they had just mocked and underestimated, who they thought was just another street cleaner, is in fact someone who has changed the lives of countless people in their city. The weight of their own prejudice is palpable now as they realize how wrong they were. Michael chuckles softly, as if reading their minds. "You see," he says with a slight shrug, "it doesn't matter how you start in life. It's how you treat others and the choices you make that define you." Whitaker steps forward, turning to the officers with a stern look. "Let this be a lesson for you. The value of a person is not in their title or their job. It's in their character, their actions, and how they treat others." Michael nods, adding, "And sometimes the most successful people are the ones who never stop working to make the world a better place." The officers stand there in stunned silence, their previous judgments now hanging heavy in the air. Scott shifts uncomfortably, realizing how much he had misjudged the situation and the person in front of him. Michael offers a hand to both officers, his smile warm yet knowing. "I hope we can all learn something from today," he says, his voice filled with genuine kindness. As the officers shake his hand, their demeanor changes. They can't help but feel the weight of their earlier words, the sting of their assumptions now sinking in. They are acutely aware of the profound lesson Michael has taught them, one they won't soon forget. Michael turns back to Whitaker, who claps him on the back. "Let's go grab that coffee we talked about," Whitaker says, smiling broadly. "It's the least I can do for someone who's done so much for this city." As they walk away, the officers remain standing in the street, processing what they've just learned. The power of assumption, judgment, and the consequences of those actions has never been clearer. and as the sounds of the busy city return to the foreground, it's clear that Michael's message has had a lasting impact, not just on the officers, but on anyone who might be watching. Whitaker's tone shifts from admiration to stern authority as he turns to face the officers. His voice is firm, and there's an unmistakable weight in his words. "Did you know who you were mocking earlier, or do you always assume someone's worth based on their appearance?" he asks, locking eyes with both officers. Peterson, the younger of the two, immediately starts to stammer, clearly uncomfortable. "We didn't mean any harm." Michael steps forward, his voice calm but filled with years of experience in dealing with people's assumptions. "I've faced people like you my whole life," he says, his gaze steady. "You judge without knowing the story. It's not new, but it's always disappointing." His words hang in the air like a heavy fog. Peterson looks down, clearly regretting his actions, but Scott, the older officer, tries to brush it off. "We were just joking around," he begins, but Whitaker cuts him off sharply. "Your job is to serve and protect, not to demean and belittle," Whitaker says, his voice laced with frustration. "You owe Mr. Johnson and this city better. We expect professionalism, and today you both failed at it." The officers stand there, the reality of their actions sinking in. They have not only embarrassed themselves, but have also hurt someone who has given so much to this city, someone who deserves respect, not ridicule. Michael's words ring in their ears as they look at each other, their faces reddening with humiliation. Scott, usually the one with a sharp response, remains silent, while Peterson shifts uncomfortably, unable to meet anyone's eyes. They both know that what they did was wrong, and now there's no escaping the weight of it. The fact that they didn't see Michael for who he truly was, that they didn't recognize his value until it was pointed out to them, seems like an unforgivable lapse in judgment. Michael watches them, no anger in his expression, just a quiet understanding. He knows how hard it can be for some people to shed their biases, but that doesn't mean he's willing to let it slide. He's not here to teach a lesson out of malice, but out of a genuine desire to help them see what's right. Whitaker turns to the officers, his voice softer now, but still filled with authority. "You'll both be called in for a review of your behavior. What happened here today is not how we operate, and I expect full accountability." The officers nod, but their faces betray a mixture of shame and regret. They know that this incident will follow them. Whether it's in their work reviews or in their own minds, they can't erase the feeling of what they've done. As Whitaker begins to walk away with Michael, the officers remain behind, their heads hanging low. They can't escape the truth that has just been laid bare before them. They've learned the hard way that judgment based on appearances doesn't just harm others, it damages their own integrity. Michael glances back at them, his tone one last time calm, but carrying weight. "Remember, what you see isn't always the whole story. Everyone deserves a chance to be seen for who they really are, not just how they appear on the outside." As he walks away with Whitaker, leaving the officers to reflect on their actions, a quiet sense of change hangs in the air. The impact of this moment will ripple out beyond just these officers. Michael's quiet strength and the lesson learned here will resonate long after they leave the alley, leaving everyone in a better place to understand the true meaning of respect. The atmosphere in the alley is heavy with the weight of the moment. Whitaker turns to the officers, his gaze unwavering. "I believe in second chances," he begins, "but those chances have to be earned. Moving forward, you two will be assigned to the community outreach programs funded by Mr. Johnson. You'll be working directly with underprivileged neighborhoods, helping to build relationships and trust where it's most needed." The officers exchange glances. They had no idea this would be the outcome. The assignment sounds like a punishment, but at the same time, it's an opportunity to redeem themselves. They've been caught off guard, humiliated in front of their superior, and a man who, despite their initial judgment, turned out to be one of the city's most influential philanthropists. Scott's shoulders slump slightly, and Peterson's face is flushed with a mixture of embarrassment and reluctance. Neither of them expected such a consequence for their actions, but the weight of Whitaker's words settles over them like a fog. Michael speaks up, his voice steady. Understanding people starts with connecting to their stories. Maybe this will help you see things differently. Not just about me, but about everyone you interact with. His words are simple, but they hit the mark. He doesn't want revenge, doesn't want to make them suffer. He wants to show them how a different approach to people can change everything. We all have stories, and every time you judge someone without knowing theirs, you're missing out on an opportunity to learn and grow. The officers remain silent, their faces unreadable. They know this isn't just an assignment. They are being given a chance to right their wrongs, to understand the lives of the very people they've judged without understanding. The weight of their mistake has become real, and now the only way forward is through action. Whitaker, seeing the hesitation in their eyes, steps forward. I want this to be a learning experience for you both. These neighborhoods need all the help they can get, but more importantly, they need to know you're there to listen, to learn, and to support. Not just to enforce rules, but to build connections. You'll start small, but I expect you both to put in the work. He pauses, letting the words sink in. If you truly want to make up for what happened here today, this is your chance. The officers nod slowly, their initial resistance giving way to a sense of duty they had not anticipated. Peterson, who had been quiet until now, clears his throat. We understand. We'll do our best. Whitaker turns to Michael, offering him a nod of appreciation. Thank you for your patience, Mr. Johnson. You've shown them what true character looks like. Michael simply smiles, his eyes steady. The real test is what they do next. As the officers walk away, they are left with more than just a feeling of guilt. They carry with them the knowledge that this is their chance to make things right. The assignment to the community outreach program is not just a task, it's a path toward change. For the first time, they are being asked not to enforce rules, but to truly understand and connect. Michael and Whitaker exchange a knowing look as the officers leave. I believe they'll get it, Whitaker says, his tone resolute. I hope so, Michael replies softly. Everyone deserves the opportunity to learn and grow. Sometimes it just takes the right moment to make that happen. As they walk away from the alley, the camera lingers on the officers in the distance, still processing the magnitude of what they've been asked to do. They have a long road ahead, but the journey has begun, and they are about to learn the true meaning of empathy and change. The story begins to spread like wildfire throughout the city. Michael's selflessness, calm demeanor, and unwavering integrity have made a deep impression. As the days go by, more and more people speak up about his character, and the community begins to rally behind him. The flower vendor, Mrs. Perez, becomes one of his most vocal supporters. That man doesn't just clean streets, he cleans hearts too, she tells her customers with a wide smile. He's a man who knows the value of hard work and kindness. He doesn't expect anything, but always gives. News outlets pick up the story, and soon, Michael's face is everywhere. The city recognizes him for his unwavering commitment to helping others. It's not long before a local community center announces a special event in his honor. Michael is invited to attend, and the entire city seems to turn out to show their appreciation. At the event, a podium is set up, and a local politician steps forward. Today, we honor Michael Johnson, the speaker announces, a man who has shown us what it means to stand tall in the face of adversity, a man who has built a legacy not through wealth, but through compassion, hard work, and humility. We are proud to call him one of our own. The crowd erupts into applause, and Michael steps forward, visibly moved but still humble. As he's presented with an award recognizing his contributions, his eyes scan the crowd, seeing faces of gratitude and admiration. But it's not just the community that has shown up. To Michael's surprise, the two officers, Scott and Peterson, arrive at the event. They walk hesitantly toward him, clearly uncomfortable but determined. Scott clears his throat before speaking. We judged you unfairly, Mr. Johnson, and we owe you a sincere apology. You've taught us an important lesson about assumptions, respect, and humility. Michael smiles softly, his voice calm yet firm. It's never too late to change. Peterson adds, We realize now how wrong we were, and we're grateful for the opportunity to make it right. Your actions, what you did for this community, are something we should all strive to emulate." Michael nods, taking their hands in a gesture of mutual respect. "I appreciate your words, but remember, change doesn't come from just admitting mistakes. It comes from the action we take afterward. Let's all keep learning and growing." The officers nod in agreement, and the crowd watches in silent respect. Michael's ability to forgive, combined with his unwavering resolve to teach others, makes him an even greater figure in the eyes of the community. As the event continues, the atmosphere shifts from a ceremony to a celebration of unity. People from all walks of life gather, and Michael shares a few words about how communities can thrive when people truly listen to one another and stand up for what's right. The camera lingers on Michael as he moves through the crowd, shaking hands, smiling, and encouraging others to do the same. He's not just cleaning streets anymore, he's cleaning hearts, bringing his community together one act of kindness at a time. As the scene fades, we see the officers talking to local residents, learning from the people they once disregarded, and making a real effort to understand their struggles and their stories. The screen fades to black with a closing message. True leadership isn't about power, it's about lifting others up. Let's change the world one act of kindness at a time. The final scene shows Michael walking through the city he loves, his steps purposeful yet calm. As he moves through the bustling streets, people of all walks of life greet him warmly. Shopkeepers wave, pedestrians smile, and children shout his name. Michael's presence brings a sense of peace and warmth, as he's now seen as a symbol of both strength and compassion in the community. As he walks past a littered street corner, Michael pauses for a moment, crouching down to pick up a piece of trash. He carefully places it in a nearby bin, a small but powerful act that reflects his belief in personal responsibility for the world around him. The camera pans out, capturing the vibrant cityscape as people continue to go about their day, now more connected and united because of Michael's example. The sun sets in the distance, casting a golden glow over the city, symbolizing hope and a brighter future for all. Michael looks up, a small, content smile on his face, knowing that his actions have made a difference.